Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democracy dies in darkness. Darkness is the 75 days it took to make the first arrest in the lynching of Ahmaud Arbery. Darkness is the 103 days that it took to fire the police officer who blindly shot through Breonna Taylor's door. Darkness is the 8 minutes and 46 seconds George Floyd had a knee on his neck before he was murdered. Darkness is the 11 times Eric Garner said, "I can't breathe," until he died. Darkness is the 25 days that Marquise McGlockton's killer was able to lay his head on his pillow until he was arrested. Darkness is the 44 days it took this state to arrest George Zimmerman after he stalked and murdered Trayvon Martin. Darkness is the 60 days of this legislative session when one of the most dangerous and unconstitutional pieces of legislation is passing through these halls, and the public is severely restricted from entering. Darkness is the over 400 years of enslavement in this country. Darkness is the almost 15 years between Brown versus the Board of Education and the federal government having to force Broward County to integrate their schools. Protest, uprisings, righteous anger brought these incidents to light. National outrage led to the arrest of the killers of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, made sure that George Floyd and Eric Garner were heard. Protests of everyday people made sure Marquise McGlockton's children knew he died protecting them. Protests in Sanford, Florida sparked more protests across the nation and started a new generation of Black Lives Matter. Yet at HB1, is attempting to drive us back in darkness. Protests are the backbone of our democracy where Black lives are disregarded and forgotten. Protests are our light. The right for people to express their discontent with the government is our light. This light ensures that this great experiment of democracy survives. For those of us who call ourselves Christian, the call to light is our duty according to the Bible. You are the light of the world. Let your light so shine before others. Yet this body through HB1 is sending a message that only certain types of protests by certain folks are accepted. It's a hard truth and it doesn't feel good. But the fact that this bill was conceived in response to protests in support of Black lives and is a priority sends a message. This message is received loud and clear. HB1 seeks to quash the light of protest. Now, I know I'm supposed to debate and tell you why this bill is bad, but let's be honest, y'all know this bill is bad. But deep down, we know that this bill would only increase the number of people in prison. We know that this bill is an unfunded mandate and puts financial burden on our constituents and local governments. We know that many of the criminal offenses in this bill are already in the statute, and this bill is wholly unconstitutional. But there's something I gotta let you understand today. Is that when it comes to Black lives and brown lives and LGBTQ lives, in many cases, protesting has been the only tool at our disposal to bring the injustices to light. It's this same light that my great-grandfather used to combat the horrors of slavery, to have my grandfather, a sharecropper, born in 1898, who then birthed my father, who persevered in spite of vicious Jim Crow laws to desegregate the University of South Florida. And for me to be standing here today, the first openly queer Black woman to serve in the Florida House. Black people have thrived and survived in spite of a system rigged against them because we refused to be afraid of the darkness. And we knew our light, our voices, our right to protest meant more, even if it cost us our very lives. But I also have some good news today. And if this bill passes and becomes law, we will still cling to the light. We will still cling to our right to protest because you cannot imprison us all. My parents taught me to whom much is given, much is required. They lived this out in word and deed. It was drilled into me the only way for progress is to protest. Many in this chamber know I have spent the majority of my career representing families who've been impacted by violence. I am reminded of Marquise McLaughlin, a 28-year-old black father wrongfully gunned down and died in front of his 5-year-old son. His killer was not arrested for 25 days because of Stand Your Ground. My hometown of Clearwater, Florida, black folks and white folks and brown folks and young folks and old folks, we came together and said, not on our watch. We marched in the streets almost every day without a permit to demand justice and accountability. His death was sought to be hidden in darkness, but it was the protest that brought it to light. And under this bill, I and many others would have been arrested and held at zero bond. So as I close, it is incredulous that this bill is a priority. It's really a shame, and as my mother would say, a shame before God, that in the midst of everything we have experienced this past year because of a global COVID-19 pandemic, great loss and instability, there has been more tenacity in protecting Confederate statues and monuments than actual people. We are codifying into law protection of shrubbery and bushes over protection from vigilantism and police violence. A solution for an invisible problem that will cost us an indeterminate amount of money. HB1 is not a bill that one Floridian asked for. This bill has prompted hundreds of thousands of emails from people from across a diverse coalition asking the question, who asked for this? It sends a message. My colleague, Representative Hunchowski, reminded me yesterday, every bill we file, no matter if it passes or not, we are communicating. Democracy will not die in darkness on my watch. I will uphold the light. I urge all members to uphold the light and vote no on this bill.
Representative Alexander, you're recognized.